Thank you very much. I appreciate being here. Can we be here okay? Not too loud or overbearing. It doesn't make too much noise. So I'm really thrilled to be here. As I was looking at the series that the Morgan Foundation has helped to provide here in conjunction with the library, it's a really exciting group of topics. I don't know how I made the cut, so I appreciate that very much in terms of the work that we did. But we did some work on home-based business I want to talk about. I'm going to provide you a little information on Cozy and what we're all about, what we do. Talk a little bit about, just give you a sense of where I'm coming from in terms of my perspective on these things. So I think it's always helpful to know where somebody who's talking about a topic is coming from, so you can get a sense of their experiences and how they play into it. And then we can talk about anything else that you want to in the small business space. There's a lot going on, obviously, right now for small business, both legislatively, at the state level, at the federal level, but also just in terms of the kinds of things you might be thinking about as you consider growing your business, starting a business, from whatever perspective you're coming from. So that's what we'll talk about tonight. I'm happy to take questions as we go along. I might need to stand still, I'm not sure. I'm happy to take questions as we go along here. Please feel free to sort of shout them out and I'll repeat them so that we can pick them up as we go through. But I just really want to make sure this time is valuable for you and you're getting the information that you're looking for. Let me start just by finding out who is in the room. How many of you are entrepreneurs currently? Okay. And how many of you are home-based? Okay, good portion of you. How many of you are thinking about starting a business? All right, great. And how many of you have realized you're in the wrong room and are afraid to get up? Okay. I always laugh, when you get on the airplane and they say, if you're not going to Cleveland, like who's going to raise their hand at that point? You just fly there and you get off and deal with it afterwards. So let me just start by talking a little bit about first kind of where I'm coming from, and so you get a sense of the background and how it fits a little bit. I grew up in Pennsylvania. I have my parents were both blue-collar jobs. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a laborer. But one of the things that we always had going on in our family, and we were very dysfunctional, like maybe a lot of your families might be, we were entrepreneurial, right? So there was never enough money. And so one of my first memories, or earliest things I remember, is growing up, my dad lost his job. And so we took a paper route on. And so every morning, I was like 5 years old. And I remember in the morning, my mom would throw my brother in the car, my dad would throw me in the car, and I'd bundle the papers as my dad threw them out the window. Every once in a while, he missed and clobbered me on the head when he was going the wrong direction or whatever. So I think a lot of that beating around the head sort of helped condition me a little bit for the work that I do with small business now. So another memory is sitting around the kitchen table packaging up motorcycle jumper cables, okay? Have you ever heard of these things? You didn't, because they never made it anywhere. But what he did is basically, the little plug, you plug in one, the other, and you can jump your motorcycle. And we're packaging these things up, mom's typing up the instructions, putting them in the baggies, and we're doing that as a family. My dad had a full shop in the garage of sheet metal fabrication, so we made sheet metal parts for Model A hobbyists. And then my mom started a paralegal school, and she did transcription in the basement, between doing studies and stuff to be a teacher. But the crowning achievement was I remember it very clearly. In 1979, my dad came home with a kerosene truck. Just came home with it. Hadn't really talked about it, whatever. I found this great truck. It was actually a water truck. And he decided that given the energy crisis, any of you remember the energy stuff going on then, kerosene heaters were all the rage. So my father comes home with a kerosene truck, 1960-something model. We painted it, with a brush, and Heritage Home Kerosene. We're in the kerosene business. And so I learned a lot from that business. One is, it's really cold sitting in the church parking lot when you're waiting to pump 5-gallon cans. I also learned you can consume your profits with one hoagie at lunchtime on a really rough day. And so it was a really interesting experience for me as a kid to sort of go through that process. In high school, I sort of was involved with junior achievement and all that stuff. But when I got to college, one of the things that I did I had to work through school and that kind of stuff, and I had to have jobs, and I was a bouncer at a bar. And basically, because my buddies and I were bouncers, and about my sophomore year, I saw this headline in the Daily Orange, which was the newspaper for the university, and it basically said, Greeks go dry. And I'm like, okay, what's this all about? And at that time, there was a lot of issues with kids getting drunk at fraternity and sorority parties. And so I read the article, and it talked about how the Greeks were going to all have to hire security guards to work their parties so they didn't have too much beer and alcohol. And all of a sudden, I had what is referred to by Michael Gerber and others as an entrepreneurial seizure. I had that moment where something that I knew collided with something that I liked, which collided with something that I think I could do to make some money on. And so I decided that we were going to start a security company because the Pinkerton guys and the Burns guys were charging $22 an hour. My bouncer friends and I were making, I think it was $3.75 an hour was the minimum wage at that point. There was a margin there. There was an opportunity. So I went out and we found a guy who had a security company, and he did concert security. We worked out a deal where we could use his license. And I am fairly certain I'm the only person in the history of Syracuse University who's gone to every single fraternity sorority party, open and closed, for 3 years of my college education. Because we basically patrolled those parties, we charged them for security, and it was a good part of how I made my way through college. So when I got out of school, because mom and dad were people who worked hard all their life, they said you have to go work for a big company. And I went to General Electric, and I lasted all of 2 years before I realized it wasn't what I wanted to do. And I ended up sort of getting into consulting and ended up getting into this business because nobody grows up saying, hey, career day, did you ever see a Chamber of Commerce exec come to career day? Did anybody ever think they're going to grow up and be in the Chamber of Commerce business? Not likely. You sort of end up there. And that's how I ended up there. Just from one thing led to another, wanted to get more involved in the community. I've been in my job, in my role roughly for about 11 years, and it's been a really interesting ride as we work with small businesses. So my perspective on this is I've got some small business background in my family. I've got some big business experience, and I've been working with the association for a significant amount of time to sort of see the challenges for small business and really try to help and work with them. COSI as an organization is one that maybe some of you are familiar with. We've got about 17,000 members in Northeast Ohio, all small businesses, and there's a lot of things that we do. I'll tell you a little bit about sort of the organization. We were created back in 1972, around after a trucker strike had happened. Some of you may remember the trucker strike, the LTL strike that happened back in that time frame. And one of the problems that small businesses had is they couldn't find freight, and they really were looking for help in that process, and they couldn't get it from the big organizations. And so a guy by the name of Ed Richard sort of started this group called the Industrial Action Group. And that group was all about helping small businesses succeed in getting the help they needed for dealing with the strike. And one of the great things was they sort of focused in on, we need organizations that can help us find solutions, not organizations that can tell us the statistics about the solutions. Because at the time they felt that the organizations that were dealing with the business community and with economic development weren't oriented enough towards action. So the Industrial Action Group was formed. Think about organizing back then. You had to actually do work. You had to sort of lick and stick stamps. You had to sort of write letters. Now you can send an email and sort of get your message out. But you couldn't do that then. The organization didn't quite make it. But what did happen is a couple of years ago, the Growth Association decided that they wanted to connect with small businesses and basically worked with some small business owners to begin this thing called COSI. Now COSI ended up with its name, Council of Small Enterprises. It wasn't the name the original guys wanted. They wanted to call it FIGHT, the Federation of Independent Tiny Empires, but they didn't think that was going to market real well. So they went back to Council of Small Enterprises, and so the organization began. Those 13 guys, I've had occasion to talk with them over a period of time. They never imagined what they would have started when they did that. And now we're an organization that has a pretty nice footprint in Northeast Ohio, and we really grew up around health insurance. A lot of us know us for health insurance. We figured out how to do some group purchasing in health insurance and create some value that way. And so we've grown over the years, and we do many, many different things. There's just 3 different things, and I'm going to do the quick 3 minutes here in terms of what we do and provide, and then I'll get into the home-based business research that we do. We have an HR desk which deals with small business HR issues for companies with less than 25 employees. So we basically we'll work with companies up to 150 employees, but what we find is under 25 employees, the small business owner is the HR manager. He doesn't have somebody who's doing it for him. He has nobody to delegate it to. Every critical decision gets made by that person. So we're there to help them make those decisions, help them provide those products and services to their employees, the benefits and those kinds of things. And we do workers' comp, we do healthcare, we do all kinds of support and service there. If you got an HR question, call us, and we can try to help you get some help. We also have what I call our connections business, which is all about when you have 17,000 small business owners in an 8-county area, you've got an amazing asset that doesn't exist in lots of other places. Not only can you talk to another small business owner on the phone or interact with them online, but you can actually get in the car and within 30 minutes probably have a cup of coffee with them. So the ability to connect with each other, which is so critical, especially in times like now, where you need ideas and advice, is another thing that we provide. And we do that through lots of different venues. We have networks, our home-based business network, which you've got some information on and was the driver for the work that we did here on home-based businesses. We have about 4,000 home-based businesses in that network sharing ideas and information with each other. We have an arts network for arts entrepreneurs, and we have a technology network called NEOSA, the Northeast Ohio Software Association. We have small, I like to call it group therapy for small business. These are small groups that get together once a month called Mindshare groups, where you sit down with 12 other entrepreneurs and you talk about your challenges and your opportunities, and you talk about things that you can do together. We also have areas around the region where you can go. If you're a home-based business owner, you'll see in our research, one of the hardest things sometimes is to focus in and get the quiet that you need to get your work done. Or sometimes it's just, you need a little bit of a social stimulation being out there outside of your home. So we have office space around the region where you can just drop in and you can work and have wireless access and interact with other entrepreneurs. And we also do our annual small business conference. We have 1,100 small businesses come together in October for a 2-day event. Great event. Owners teaching other owners the issues they need, more than 60 breakout workshops, and then 4 great national level keynote speakers. And then we have I Buy Neil, which is all about buying local. And that's a program that we've initiated recently that I can talk more about if you're interested. And then finally, we do advocacy at the local, state, and federal level. I spend probably 1 to 2 days a week in Columbus dealing with the legislature on issues around small business and the administration. We spend probably a day a month in Washington dealing with issues at the federal level, primarily healthcare at the federal level and taxation is what we do in advocacy. And then we do research, which is sort of why I'm here today, around small business. So we've done some research on healthcare and the future of healthcare and done some scenario planning around that. We did our home-based business research. The research we're doing this year for our small business conference is around social media and how do small businesses use social media to advance their business. So there's a lot under roof besides health insurance, even though that's what we're known most for. And we'd be happy to help you with any of those kinds of issues in your business. So let's talk about our home-based business network and our home-based business research. We have been around, like I said, for a long time, more than 35 years. And when we sort of did a focus group or a session with a bunch of our home-based business owners and said, what are some things we can do? It was actually broader. It was with our small businesses. What can we do to sort of advance small business in Northeast Ohio? And a lot of folks sort of latched onto this idea that there's a lot of home-based business owners out there, and our estimate was 25% of our members are home-based businesses. Nationally, that's the case as well. About 25% of small businesses are home-based businesses. Overall, they represent, the businesses that are home-based represent a significant portion of what's going on out there. And there's a potential for common issues and common perspective that we can get together on and figure out, you have that issue, I have that issue, how do we work together? And one of the funny things that we had, and I had a really rough picture, and our marketing people didn't let me use it because it was too rough, but it was a picture of the actual flip chart. And the count on the flip chart, when we talk about the home-based business network, which I still remember, says it's about time you recognize that home-based businesses are a big part of the organization, that you got to do things specifically for them, and they've got unique needs that you can service. And so it was an organizational duh moment when we figured out that was important for us to do, but it was one that sort of propelled us to thinking about, okay, how do we really leverage this similarity among our members? What are home-based business owners? A lot of people have perspective about them, but that's not it. And we found out in our research that's not what the home-based business owner is all about. In fact, what you'll find in this research and the results that we've got here is home-based business owners are very, very similar to non-home-based business owners. And there are a lot of myths out there that people have about home-based businesses that are probably perpetuated by the kinds of things that you see in the back of magazines that say, stuff envelopes from home and make tons of money. Or, the things that sort of, I learned a lot about cash forwarding when I was researching home-based businesses. People actually stick money in an envelope and just send it to you, I guess. So there's all kinds of these scams out there that are billed as home-based businesses. But that's not what the home-based business community that we surveyed sort of is all about. And in fact, one of the biases I'll throw out there is that we surveyed about 800 businesses, home-based businesses and non-home-based businesses, about half and half. And they were members of ours. So there's a little bias in this in that they tend to be businesses that are actually businesses because they need the benefits, they need access to resources, they've made a decision to be part of a business organization. So folks that are more maybe hobbyists, folks that are doing something on the side that isn't really their full-time avocation aren't really part of this data set. So to the extent that you're sort of seeing different things out there about home-based businesses that don't square up, These are home-based businesses that are actually real businesses doing real work like your businesses are or could be. As I said, we surveyed over 5,300. We went out to over 5,300 small businesses, and we got a response of over 800 of them. This is pretty good data. It's a pretty good data set to work with. And again, I talked about the cozy member bias. So what was the first thing that we found out? Home-based businesses are born out of desire, not desperation. Sometimes there's a perspective that what home-based businesses are people who are out of work and looking for a job. And that is not at all what we found in our research. In fact, when we asked people what prompted the start of your business, and I apologize, your slides don't have this data in it. Get us your cards afterwards. We'll get you the deck with the slides. You know, the marketing folks hate when I do this, but I can't resist. When I do the presentation, it's got to be warm when I'm walking out the door. And so I wanted to add in some of these data slides so you actually had the data to see some of the results here, so we can get these to you as we go along. But when you talk about what prompts people to start their business, the number one reason is they stopped enjoying working for someone else. Not that they were fired, not that they were terminated, but they had that moment, that entrepreneurial seizure, when they realized, I can do this a lot better than the guy I'm working for, do it for myself, and make more money doing it. Or finally realized, you know what, I'm not sure why I'm wasting my time doing what I'm doing right now. I want to do this other thing that I'm passionate about. So people stopped enjoying working for someone else, decided they could do exactly what they were doing better on their own. Some people believed the higher income, and you can see the rest of the answers there. But the key motivator was, it was a decision. It wasn't a requirement. They didn't have to go and do it. Now, unfortunately, in today's economy, we do have people starting home-based businesses, what I call coerced entrepreneurship, people who sort of are in entrepreneurship. It's maybe in Africa they'd call it survivorship, but you just got to do something to bring money in and pay the bills. But in most cases, in the folks we surveyed, it was a choice to sort of become an entrepreneur. Another myth is that children are why people do home-based businesses. They have to stay home to be with the kids, and so home-based businesses are mompreneurs. They're not, real businesses. They're people who are sort of juggling. They're basically, the business fits around their kids' schedules, and we found that's not the case either predominantly. In fact, 54% of the home-based businesses, children were not a factor at all in driving their business. And you can see the other numbers there. 29% yes, 17% somewhat. So is there some truth to it? Yeah. But is it the driving factor? Absolutely not. And in fact, when we say how old were the kids when you started your business, you can see it's sort of across the board. But 32% didn't have kids at all. One of the things that we found is that the survey respondents that we had in this survey were twice as likely to have children as the population. So in that data set, not seeing it show up is especially significant. How do they start a business? Again, on this idea that this is a choice to start a small business, it's not like people just inherited money all of a sudden. They could go off on their own. 65% of people who started their small business pulled into their pocket to do it, into their personal savings. So they made an investment of their own savings. About 23% didn't need startup financing. And the balance, you hear about credit cards, and they're a big part of financing businesses. But most people dipped into their personal savings to start their business. Again, a choice and a significant undertaking. Diving into your savings is not something that you do lightly. We also found out home-based business owners are both experienced and capable. Sometimes there's a perspective out there that says, well, home-based business owners are people who they don't have as much experience or those kinds of things, and we also found that not to be true. In fact, they had more than 15 years of experience on average. 32% had more than 15 years of experience when they started their own business. And you can see the rest of the numbers there as well. But this is not, you have 15% here with no experience at all in what they're doing, or 0 to 1 years is 8%. But you can see the preponderance of people have more than 6 years of experience when they start their own home-based business. So they understand the industry they're in. They are dipping into their personal savings. They're making a choice to do so. And they're also smart. They tend to be more likely than average to be people who are college educated, with graduate degrees. Those numbers of college education and graduate degrees are much higher than what you would see in the general population. I think in Ohio, 21% of the population has a 4-year degree. And so you see here that 39% have a 4-year college graduate, 27% have a graduate degree. How old when you started your current business? So a lot of people say, well, you start a business when you're young and you don't have anything to lose, or when you're old and you're done with your career. Again, not the case. There are some young folks and there are some older folks, but most people start their business in the prime of their earning years. They're taking that risk at a time in their life where they're really, trying to maximize their income. 33% between age 31 and 40, 25% between age 41 and 50. We talk about the challenges that home-based businesses face. A lot of people say, well, the biggest challenge for a home-based business is they're lonely. That's their challenge, and we have to find a way to give them, people to work with and talk to, because they have these unique challenges about being lonely and isolated. And while that is somewhat the case, and that was one of the myths going in for us too, we thought one of the biggest benefits of creating a home-based business network would be to give these home-based business owners other people to talk to and connect with. But we also found that that's not the case. In fact, their biggest challenge of running a home-based business was calling it quits for the day. When do you stop working? Your desk is always there. You always have the ability to just step into the office for a few more things to do. So calling quits for the day was one of the biggest challenges. Separation of work and home life, another significant challenge. Not unlike, by the way, non-home-based businesses, but a significant one here because you've got that dynamic of not having an office to depart from or go to. Maintaining the discipline to get your work done. You see the other factors here that are sort of the things that are more commonly thought of: sense of isolation, maintaining a professional image, having access to external space. One of the interesting things that we found is as people are in a home-based business longer, that problem with maintaining discipline and the distraction sort of, gets to be less of a factor, more normalized. And it makes sense. The longer you're in a home-based business, the more of a routine you get into, the more you sort of get used to it. I've got a member who is a home-based business owner, just a really wonderful consultant. She does a lot of work with organizations, and she's very particular. When sometimes I make the mistake and I slip and I say, hey, can I give you a call? You're going to be home today. No, I'm going to be in my office. She's very focused on the fact that, this is my office, my work time. I'm in the office, and I'm making it happen. One of the things that we hear sometimes from home-based business owners is, this whole distractions issue. Clearly, if you're at home working during the day and your car is in the driveway, that's certainly an open invitation for your neighbor to stop by and talk to you about things that you don't care about, right? Because you're home all day, right? You got nothing going on. I mean, that's one of the things that home-based business owners often report is that their families, their friends don't understand that, hey, I'm not home, just hanging out. I'm home doing work. And I've talked to some home-based business owners who've done a really nice job in training their family and friends. You don't call me between 8 and 5 at home unless you're calling me about the business, and they don't answer that. They have the separate home line and the separate work line. Those are the kinds of things you have to establish to sort of keep that separation going. There's some additional challenges. We thought that it was going to be really hard. It's hard for home-based business owners to find people to service them, that people don't want to come out and sort of provide technology service or support for home-based business owners. And while it's a challenge, it's not one of the driving challenges or most significant challenges that they have. They also have less needs in some of these areas as well than other businesses do. But generally, their challenges tend to be around the maintaining discipline, maintaining focus on the things they have to get done. When we talk about what the biggest challenge for their business is, much like other businesses as well, marketing and sales is one of the most significant challenges they have. How do I get out there? How do I get myself out there? How do I gain more business? How do I accelerate the sales of my business? Again, not dissimilar to the other things that folks are dealing with. The maintaining a professional image piece, one of the things that we wondered is, do you worry about? Is it a challenge to your business that you're at home and on occasion the dog is barking when you're on the phone, or the kids are sort of not away and respecting your office time, or that somebody sends the package or your bill to 123 Happy Lane? Is that a problem? And so the professional image piece did not tend to be an issue that people really sensed was a problem for them. We also found out, this idea again that home-based business is a temporary situation, and the reality is if you're a home-based business, what you're desiring to do is grow enough to get into an office. And we heard overwhelmingly from people, not so fast. I don't ever want to sort of have an office. I don't need that overhead. I like being a home-based business. I think it gives me a certain flexibility, if you will. It keeps my costs low. I'm not looking to grow and sort of expand into huge offices somewhere. We asked them, why would you leave your home-based business? And what's the biggest reason? So is this a temporary state of being for you? 47%. I will leave my home-based business when they carry me out or when I party my way out in retirement. But I'm not leaving it for another reason. Business model failed or lost interest, 13%. Finding a new opportunity, 10%. I thought what was interesting here is for those folks who say that, and I'm sorry it might be hard to read in the back, but there's some things here. Find a position in my field that pays 100% more. So we asked, if you made more money, would you leave your home-based business? And we found that only 14% or so in this survey sort of bit on that answer. And for most of them, they had to get at least twice as much as what they're getting today to leave their home-based business. So it indicates some level of satisfaction with the business that they're running. What's the most positive aspect of your home-based business? The freedom and independence, 40%. The ability to juggle their work and family issues, 15%. Higher income, 13%. And there's some other things as well. No commute, 5%. Ability to work alone. There are 2% cave dwellers out there. They just want to be by themselves, so leave me in my house, and I'll do my work. But I thought that was interesting, and probably not surprising. Freedom and independence. When we present these results to home-based business owners, they go, yeah, I knew all that. And so part of it is you're experiencing these things and you understand these things. At the same time, it's sort of validating to figure out where you are versus others and your views on these things, and also to help people understand that you're not so different from those other small business owners. We also asked the question, what do you think, are you likely to be a home-based business owner longer term? And this is to the point of, are you looking to just grow and move on? 65%, I'm likely to remain a home-based business. 24% not sure. 11% are in that mindset that says, hey, when I grow, I'm going to get myself an office and I'm going to move out of my house. We asked, as a home-based business, do you think it's harder to attract customers? Do you think that affects the way your customers view you? And 65% weren't aware of an impact either way, so it wasn't a big issue for them. 23% thought the home-based business status actually helps them. Some of our folks have said things like, my customers know when they call me I'm going to be very responsive to them. My customers know I'm not wasting their money on extra overhead. I have pride in being a home-based business. I'm a symbol of entrepreneurship in America, those kinds of responses. Only 12% thought their home-based status hurts their ability to attract and retain customers, fairly similar to that 11% who thought that when they grew, they'd move out of their home-based business. So there's a mindset there among a small minority of folks that says, being a home-based business, this isn't necessarily a great thing for my business. And we ask people, do you tell people you're a home-based business? Is that something that you feel compelled to put out there when you're bidding for business? More than 50% say it's not relevant or important to my client. 5% aren't concerned about the perceptions of it. 24% tell if they're asked. 12% they're proud to be a home-based business, so they tell folks. And 8% explain the benefits they get. So we just wanted to get a sense of how people are talking about this with their clients. Is it something that they believe is something they want to talk about, not talk about, et cetera? I love this one. What would you change about your home-based business? 34%, nothing. I like what I'm doing with my home-based business. I'm satisfied with my home-based business. And then you look at this, they want more space, more separated space, and then a variety of other answers around technology and other kinds of things. This was an interesting one as well. Total revenue in the last fiscal year for home-based businesses. 6%, more than $1 million a year from a home-based business. That's a pretty phenomenal result. More typical, we hover around $26,000 to $250,000. But those are still some pretty big numbers in there for home-based businesses. It shows that these are businesses that can sort of support good lifestyles, businesses that support far above per capita average income, and businesses that have opportunity for people. And then we asked, what's your personal income? So this question here was revenues for your company. And then we asked what your personal income was for your business. Again, these numbers are not insignificant. These are businesses that sort of reflect, these people in home-based businesses are getting the value of the education that they have, which is above average for other folks. So it's possible to make a very good living as a home-based business. These are not side jobs, they're not hobbies, those kinds of things. One of the things we asked is, of the folks in home-based business, I don't have the stats here, but how many of you are the sole primary income for your household? And it was a very high number, more than 70%. On average, how much do you work per week? Now, you all know how much you work per week, so how do you stack up? Most people are working between 41 and 60 hours a week. not all that different from the non-home-based folks. So pretty similar results there. But putting in just as many hours, trying to get it done. And that separation of balance and leaving the office probably plays into that as well. This is the other one that I found fairly fascinating. Home-based business owners are creating jobs. The image of the home-based business owner being the single person in a company, one employee company, not necessarily true all the time. In fact, 17% had 3 or more employees. 47% of the sample here had at least 1 employee. And a lot of those folks explaining the space issue are operating out of their home with all those employees. So when we looked at those folks who had 3 or more employees, I think we found that something like 25% of them had actually 3 or more employees in their house with them. I know there's a company called Hanson Services in town. Some of you may know what they do. They do support for in-home care. And Marianne Hanson talks about how at one point I think she had 13 people working out of her home. And it was like a family. They'd bring the kids in and put the kids in the living room and the whole thing, but it was a very full household running that company. In many other ways, as we said, home-based business owners aren't very different at all from other small business owners. They are very similar. A lot of the stats that we see, the numbers are fairly the same, but I think the point that we sort of drew from this is that this is a population that one, needs to be recognized for what they're providing for the community. We need to engage them and help them with what they're doing to sort of expand their businesses, and we need to provide support for them, and that's sort of what our Home-Based Business Network is all about, and a lot of the programs and services that we put together are all about for home-based business owners. Questions about the research or some of the things that we sort of looked at? Yes, sir. We did, and I can give that to you afterwards. I've got my computer here and it's on there, but it was sort of across the board. There was a lot of LLC and sole proprietors set up. LLC was probably the most common way folks have set up. I think it was about 20%, 22% is S corporations as well. But those 3 statuses. Yes, ma'am.
Are there any issues regarding zoning or covenants in running a home-based business?
There are in some communities. For example, I'm sorry, the question was, are there any zoning restrictions or ordinances in running a home-based business? Some communities have those. I'm not familiar with what Hudson's ordinances are. If anybody here knows, you can sort of yell it out. But in communities like, for example, Shaker Heights and in Solon, there have been discussions about how to sort of tighten it down. In Shaker Heights, they actually have a rule in the books that says that you can't have more than 3 people in your house at the same time who aren't related to you for business purposes or something like that. I don't know how you enforce that. I don't know if there's sort of the bedroom police come around and look around and say, now, do you live here? What are you doing here? But in Solon, they tried to put an ordinance in that would not allow UPS trucks to deliver in residential neighborhoods more than X number of times or whatever, or you can't have more than X number of cars parked in your driveway. So you need to check in the community you live in. I don't, again, know for Hudson, but most communities recognize that these are tax-paying members of the community, and they bring benefits to the community. Homeowner associations are the other place where they put restrictions in. The association that we have in our community basically says that you can't run a business from your home, though my wife runs one. The guy up the street's a builder, he runs one. So there's a number of the homeowner association officers who also run businesses. But I think the idea is you don't want the cement mixer sitting outside in the lawn, or you don't want the landscaper having his crew show up at 6:30 in the morning, getting in their trucks and sort of parking on the street. So, yes, sir.
Yes, Steve, I was asked today, relative to the survey, what was the percentage of women versus men?
This survey, we had predominantly men in the survey, but it wasn't like 90%. I think it was 65, 35 for our survey. And again, I think that sort of ties to the head of household numbers that we saw, and the fact that this is the primary source of income for households, which is still dominated by men driving households there. But it wasn't. It was relatively even. Actually, Mindy, where are you at, Mindy? 71% men? Okay. You have the data stack back there? Do you have the data stack back there? Or? Okay. So, and we have, again, we can get you the full data pack that has some of those demographics in it. I would like to actually, by the way, introduce Will Lincoln is a member of our Home-Based Business Network Advisory Board. He was one of the founding members of our Home-Based Business Network. And he actually, he just did a book on home-based businesses, how to run a home-based business, right, Will? So he's been doing, how long have you been in your home-based business?
Off and on for about 30 years.
For about 30 years. So somebody who's been there, done that, for those of you who are thinking about it. But Will is a great resource. He serves on a lot of our committees and things like that in COSI. Yes, ma'am? What's the name of the book, Will?
The name of the book is The Successful Home Business Guide. There are a few flyers in the back, and it will be published in April. It's all ready to go to the printer.
Is that not one of those yellow and black books for dummies, Will? Is that, no?
It's written by dummies.
Whole new series, right? Okay. Other questions about the research? So one of the things that I guess I'd ask is, for those of you who are thinking about starting a business, I guess, have you had difficulty finding resources to help? What are some of the challenges that you're facing right now as you're sort of looking at that? And part of it is just getting out of the gates and getting going with it. Yes, sir.
Tell me about the fast track training for the Kauffman Foundation.
Kauffman Foundation, for those of you who don't know, so the question was, can you comment on the fast track training from the Kauffman Foundation? The Kauffman Foundation, for those of you who don't know, is probably the country's preeminent research foundation for small businesses. They do all kinds of research on entrepreneurship, and they have great resources there. I believe it's probably just kaufmanfoundation.org. Is it kaufman.org? Right.
2 F's, 1 N.
Kaufman with 2 F's and 1 N? Yeah. N, right. So anyway, but they basically do a lot of research, and they have some programs for entrepreneurs. The fast track training is kind of a way for entrepreneurs to sort of move through the steps of creating a business plan and those kinds of things. They tend to be done, they have to be done by certified fast track trainers. So they've gone through instruction on teaching it, and it really is an excellent resource. If you have access to fast track, and I know there's some fast track facilitators in the region here, it's really a great way to sort of deal with it. The business plan is a key part of thinking about your home-based business. Now, there are a lot of people who are saying these days, you don't really need a business plan. You just sort of get going and be dynamic and all that. When you work for somebody, it's really clear as to how you know if you're doing well or not, right? You have goals, and you have metrics, and they measure you, and they might review you and tell you, hey, you're doing a good job or you're not doing a good job. When you work for yourself in a home-based business, it's a lot harder to sort of, keep track of what you're doing. So one of the things I think the business plan is really helpful for is it gives you a chance to set some goals and gives you a chance to measure yourself against it. No business plan is a Bible. You don't follow a business plan whether or not things change. But a business plan allows you to sit back and take a look at what you're doing, how you're doing it, and are you hitting the goals. Oftentimes, you get sort of locked into a mentality that says, I'm in this business, I'm going to make this work, and you stop evaluating your progress versus your other options. And at some point, you realize that you could be doing a little bit better working at Burger King, maybe not having as much fun, but you have to sort of really evaluate, what did I get into this business to do? What are my goals? How am I going towards it? And that's where I think the business plan is most helpful. It also allows you to put all of your thoughts on paper and take a step back and go, does this make any sense? Is it worth it? Is it realistic? One of the hardest things to do with a business plan is to share it with somebody else. So you take all of your ideas, all your aspirations, all your goals, you pour them down on paper, you hand it to somebody, they look at it, and you can immediately tell they're going, what is this person thinking? But the good part about the business plan is it's a vehicle for you to get feedback because you want to be successful. And if you share it with people who work with small businesses, other small business owners, you'll get that feedback. And that's a big part of, I think, being successful is being open to feedback, getting the feedback, thinking about different ideas. And so the business plan is a good vehicle for having those discussions. So I'd recommend if any of you, we can definitely help you with that or refer you to other people in the community who do that. There is a website I'd also refer you to if you're looking for help and assistance. It's NEO, as in Neo, NEO 411, like as in for calling information, .biz. NEO411.biz. It's a site we put up a few years ago. We're in the process of updating it a little bit more. But you can go on there, and they have a resource guide where you can check off the things you need help in, hit go, and it'll come back with a list of organizations in the region that can help you. And so, one of the hardest things we have in Northeast Ohio to deal with is we have all these fragmented resources for small business. You've got 80+ local chambers of commerce. You've got organizations like ours. You've got contractors associations and industry groups and the Hispanic Business Association and all kinds of organizations out there, the SBA, everybody else. But how do you navigate that if you're just looking for resources and trying to get started? So what we do is you can go through and you can check off the resources you're looking for, the kind of help you need, and it's pretty specific, and it'll come back with a list of people that you can call and places you can go. So at least you can get started. Now, you got to do the legwork and make the phone calls and that kind of stuff, but at least you get a starting point on it, and you're not sort of struggling with where do I go next. Any other questions about the research? Or? So just a couple of additional things here, and I don't know how we're doing on time. It's 7:45. Are we sort of got plenty of time? Okay, great. So let's talk about a couple of issues that are out there for small business right now that that I think is important to pay attention to. And for home-based businesses, maybe this one issue is a little less concerned, but it's an important one to sort of know is out there. There is an initiative right now that is circulating around at the federal level called Card Check. How many are familiar with Card Check? Card Check is an initiative designed to make it incredibly easy to unionize small business. Basically, what it says is that if half of your employees plus one sign cards saying they're interested in a union, you're automatically unionized. There's no more union vote. And so one of the things, if you're in a company where you have 5 or 6 or 7 employees, if 3 or 4 of your employees sign off, not knowing exactly what it could mean and interested in looking at having that process an election in the business, they're actually signing off and certifying a union in your business. And so if you have, if you're interested in that issue and want to learn more about it, I'd invite you to visit our website. We're tracking it very closely. Our concern is not about unions. Quite frankly, we're a fan of well-run unions that do the right thing. Our concern is that people are not going to have the ability to vote in private for a union. What it does is it basically says that everybody in the organization knows how you feel about it and knows whether or not you sign off on the card to sort of have a union in the organization. So it's something that we want to be very careful about and help people understand because it has implications for the workplace that are pretty significant for small business. The stimulus package has some additional opportunities and implications in it for small business that we're trying to make folks aware of. One of the things that the stimulus package has done is it's raised the level of expensing for equipment purchases. It's doubled it. So it's gone up to about, I think it's up to $250,000 you can expense in the first year of having a piece of equipment. Typically, you'd have to depreciate a piece of equipment over its useful life. What this allows you to do is to take the entire write-off in a single year. And for a lot of you in your home-based businesses, your equipment expenses may not be as significant, but you can expense all of that up to that amount and not have to depreciate it over years. So that was a relatively significant tax break that was provided in the stimulus package for small businesses. There also has been some changes to the SBA. Anybody familiar with Sba Loans? Okay, so the Small Business Administration, for those of you who aren't, this is an important thing to understand. The Small Business Administration is in the business. One of the businesses they do is they support lending to small businesses. So when a bank looks at you, in today's environment, a bank pretty much is looking at your credit score. And if your credit score is a little shaky or they're not sure about your business plan or your business model, a bank may be hesitant to loan you money for your project. And so what the SBA does is it backs those loans with banks. So if a bank deems you to be lendable with some help from the SBA will back the loan, and they've increased that backing to 95%. So what that says is that if the bank, if you mess up on the loan and don't repay the loan, and the bank has to close on that loan, the bank is only going to lose 5% of their investment. The SBA will back the rest of it. And so SBA-backed lending is an important tool to sort of understand as a small business owner. It tends to apply mostly to when you're buying equipment or buying property, things that are sort of able to be collateralized. But it's a great resource for you if you're thinking about making an investment. Coupling that with the new depreciation and expensing schedules is a nice opportunity for you if you're in a capital-intensive business. I'm not familiar with which program you're talking about. Okay, I'm not sure on that program what that program is. Yeah, I don't know that specific program with all that. There is a program, a link deposit program that's available through the treasurer's office. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, where you can get a reduction in fees. Okay, yeah, no, I don't know about the capital access program. I'm not familiar with that one. If you do go to ODOT's website, though, there are a lot of resources that the Ohio Department of Development for you as well. One of the hardest parts is navigating those resources. So if you're in a place where you're sort of saying, how do I qualify for this? How can I get help? You can call us, you can call ODOT directly, and we can help you navigate to some of those things as well. General questions or comments, those kinds of things. Yes, sir.
Not so much about the program, but COSI itself.
Yes.
How much does it cost to join and what are the dues and fees?
COSI is $300 a year, so it is relatively inexpensive resource. I could put it into terms of cups of coffee for you, depending if you go to Starbucks or McDonald's. So we do that as well, but it's relatively inexpensive. It's again, a lot of resource. I think if you just join for one reason, forget about the benefits and those things. Our small business conference, it's held in October, is a 2-day event at the IX Center. Do you know the dates, Mindy, this year? So like the last week of October or so, it's on our website. You can get the dates there. But basically, it's 2 days of nonstop action for small business. We have 4 keynote speakers. We're looking at keynote speakers right now. We've got some really interesting people lined up. We're talking to the person who developed the social media strategy for President Obama's campaign, which I thought is going to be an interesting sort of discussion, is how did they totally change the rules of the game. Last year, we had Debbie Fields from Mrs. Fields Cookies. We had Michael Simon from Lola, the Iron Chef. We had Danny Gilbert one year. We had the guy who started Expedia one year. So we really bring in some really top-notch speakers each year to talk to small businesses, folks that you wouldn't typically have access to without traveling somewhere. We also have at that conference, again, about 55 workshops during those 2 days. And they're basically taught by other small business owners. And they're about every topic imaginable: finance, technology, human resources, marketing and sales, all those kinds of things. We have a big networking event. We have 400 or 500 people the first evening get together, cocktails, that kind of stuff, and just get to know each other, et cetera. And then we have about 70 or so exhibitors that have products and services for small business that you can talk to, get to know them a little bit more, et cetera. We have Ask the Expert tables that are set up where you can sit down with somebody like Will, who's had a lot of experience in being home-based, or an accountant or a lawyer, and just get a mini consultation on an issue you've been thinking about. How do I take the steps to incorporate? I've got this employee that I need to sort of deal with. How do I do that safely? How do I get my website started? And that's all free with membership. You don't pay a dime to come to the Small Business Conference. So for $300, you get at least 2 days of access to information and resources. And then you also get access to all the resources on our website, which we just redesigned, which has just a plethora of things out there for small business folks to sort of help them with their business. And I think there's probably phone numbers and stuff. You have my card, and I think Pat Pell, who I'd like to introduce. Pat Pell, if you stand up, Pat. Pat is our home-based business network leader. So she's a full-time staff person at COSI, dedicated to home-based businesses. She's a former executive director of the Palmer Chamber of Commerce, and before that, she worked in the corporate world in different roles. But a great resource, and her entire 100% a day experience is helping small business owners like yourselves in home-based businesses. Yes, sir. I can talk about some of the other benefits briefly. I talked about them broadly, but in the savings area, we have health insurance and workers' compensation. We also have, in our health insurance programs, we have both individual programs and group programs for you. We have a freight program where if you do a lot of shipping, we have a freight broker that can help you with a lot of your freight. We have an Office Max program where you can save. You get a card, and when you go into Office Max, a lot of folks, shop down the aisles. You bring your card, and you present it, and you get a discount, special pricing on a lot of their products and services. We have a payroll program. Even if you only have one employee or you're the only employee, payroll is an important thing to think about. There's a lot of filings and taxes and things like that that you can have deducted right away from your payroll without having to screw with it yourself. Making sure you do all that right is very important. So there's payroll services that we provide as well. What else did they miss? Any of them? Vision, life, dental. is also available through us. And then we have networking and education events. In addition to the Small Business Conference, we do about 140 events a year for small business owners. A couple of times a month, we're doing Coffees with Cozy at both the East and West corporate college locations in Beechwood and out in Westlake, where we just get together and we talk about topics of interest. I think this week we were talking about sustainability for small business. We talk about marketing. We talk about technology and those kinds of things. We had the Mindshare groups, which I talked about, which are small groups that meet once a month. The same people meet every month to help each other, coach each other to success. And we have our MindSpring program, which is basically 24/7 peer advice on our website at cozymindspring.com. And some of these programs are in your folder. There's information about them where you can go on there 24 hours a day, and that's member or non-member, and get answers to your questions, get tips in different areas of running a small business, et cetera. Then all the advocacy stuff we do would be the other piece. If you're interested in advocacy, we have an advocacy committee that meets each month and decides how Cozy is going to support small business on different areas. We're nonpartisan. We don't follow a strict Republican agenda. We're not a typical business organization in that respect. We're about what's good for small business. So we'll support a Democratic idea or a Republican idea as long as it makes sense for small business, and kind of fight it out in our committee and figure out where we're going to be as an organization on those issues. Yes, sir. So we see trends evolving for home-based business and things changing. I think, obviously, the biggest single trend impacting home-based businesses is the improvement of technology available to you. I mean, that is the number one thing that is enabling people to do things they could never do before. And we're starting to see even support industries to support businesses, like the printing industry, for example. Technology has allowed them. There's a company called, I think it's called 48hourprint.com. And basically, they use technology. So there's a very small business. You can sort of run a job as cheaply as a very large job because of the way they set their presses up and their exclusive focus on doing everything digitally and doing everything sort of custom to small business. So I think technology has helped small businesses sort of even out the playing field a bit. I think the other thing we're sort of seeing is this whole generation of new folks who are coming out of school now have a lot bigger premium on sort of the balance of their life and their work. And so we're seeing a lot more of those folks choose home-based or entrepreneurial paths because they don't want to sort of be caught up in a larger machine. And so it's been interesting to see sort of the rise of young entrepreneurs that we've had in our region. You know, health insurance is a thing that obviously is a big issue for a lot of small businesses. When I got into this role about 11 years ago, 68% of small businesses offered health insurance to their employees. That number is now down to 48%. So it's more likely than not, if you work for a small business, that you don't have health insurance. But you know, we see a lot of people going to the individual market and those kinds of things, and health insurance is just a continuing problem for people. It's one of the single biggest barriers to somebody leaving a company and starting their own small business. So we're trying to do everything we can to make that a little bit easier, working with the governor and at the federal level to sort of make health insurance more accessible for people, no matter what their health status is. It's just some of the things that we're seeing. Yes, sir.
Kind of two questions. One, franchise versus non-franchise for home-based businesses, and are you seeing a trend towards maybe more franchise because so much of that legwork and support has already either been done or can be done for them?
I'm not sure that I could give you accurate stats on trends around that. What I will say is that on the franchising side, depending on the kind of business you're getting into, I mean, a franchise is an extremely legitimate turnkey way of getting into something, and you can do it at any level of investment. I mean, there's franchises as cheap as $10,000 or $15,000, and there's franchises that you can pay, millions of dollars, a few $100,000 for at least. I think that the important thing about a franchise is making sure you understand what the franchise agreement is all about, because a franchise can be extremely restrictive in terms of what you can and cannot do. When you run a franchise, often you're not running your own business in the same way as if you're sort of independently established. A lot of franchises have very strict rules about what you can do, what you can't do, how you advertise, what you can say, et cetera. So the franchise agreement, which is a requirement, in any conversation you're having with a franchisor, they have to provide you the franchise offering agreement so you can understand all the terms and conditions. You need to study that document very, very carefully because not all franchisors know what they're doing either. They put information out there, and their franchise agreements, there's some really good ones, some really bad ones. There's a guy in town here, and there's no sort of strings with him or whatever, but he's really, really good in franchises. I think his blog is called The Franchise King, and I can, if you're interested, give me your card and I can get you his information afterwards. But he is somebody in this region who is one of our top experts on franchising, and he helps a lot of small business owners get into franchises and do it effectively.
Of the home-based businesses, what percentage are franchised and non-franchised?
I don't know the answer to that question. We didn't ask that question in our research, so I couldn't tell you. Mm-hmm. We do in the data pack, which I don't have here with me. I should have put the whole thing on the slides, I'm sorry, but it took about 10 slides out, and you've asked me now about 6 of those questions as a group. So next time I'll do the whole packet, but we'll get the whole data pack to anybody who gives us their card afterwards so you can take a look. Yes, sir. We don't do property and casualty liability insurance right now, but we could refer you to a whole bunch of brokers who could help you with that. It's a marketplace where we've looked at it a couple times. There's not a lot we can do in terms of saving money or helping folks with it, so we can refer you to somebody if you're interested. Well, I don't want to keep folks any longer than need to be here. I'm sure we've all got places to go, but I do appreciate the opportunity to come out and talk with you tonight. I'll hang around for a little bit, answer any questions that you have, and if you want to leave me your business card, I can make sure that you get the data slides. And if you're interested, I can put you on some of our distributions on advocacy and things that we're doing. So thanks very much for coming out tonight. Yes, ma'am. I will do that. I'll get you the slides. Yeah, thanks. Well, thank you very much. Have a great evening.